Okay, good afternoon, everybody. If I have not met you yet, my name is Ashley Holland. I am the curator and director of curatorial initiatives with Art Bridges, and I am so thrilled to be introducing our last panel for the day, which is Art Bridges Partner Stories. And one is going to be a little bit of an outside look about a super important project. And then another one is really an insider look into Art Bridges and the impact. So to begin, Mindy Besaw is the Director of Fellowships, Research, and University Partnerships and Curator American Art with Crystal Bridges Museum. She has been with the museum since 2014, where she oversees the American Art Collection and the Tyson Scholars of American Art Fellowship Program. In 2018, Besaw spearheaded an award-winning renovation and reinstallation of the early American art galleries at Crystal Bridges, which aimed to confront and consider the complexities inherent in American art. Besaw is co-curator with Jamie Powell for Knowing the West, Revisiting American Art and Stories, which opens this fall. And then she has also done recent exhibition projects, including Art for a New Understanding, Native Voices, 1950s to Now, Cross-Pollination, Martin Johnson Heath, Thomas Cole, Frederick Edwin Church, and Our Contemporary Moment, as well as Companion Species, which toured with Art Bridges. Prior to her current position, Besaw was curator of art at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Cody, Wyoming, and a curatorial associate at the Institute of Western American Art at the Denver Art Museum. She has written and lectured on a variety of topics and artists covering 19th to 21st century America and has a passion for art of the American West. Besaw holds a PhD in American art history from the University of Kansas and is the current co-chair of the Association of Historians of American Art. Take it away, Mindy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And okay, I was to say, wow, I just lost my clicker already. So I was asked to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of collection sharing. And I'll be honest, again, Crystal Bridges and Art Bridges, I know they sound the same, but they're really two different things. We are an Art Bridges partner, and we're super excited to live in the same city as all of the Art Bridges staff, and many of whom I've literally met for the first time today. So thanks for having me. In kind of the flow, I suppose, of the day, this is a good timing to build out on maybe some of the topics that were already touched on. What are some of the restrictions in loans that just can drive everyone up the wall, and how can we come together to overcome them? So I am going to talk about a very specific project that is occupying a lot of my time right now. So everything that I do tends to align to this exhibition, and you're seeing the cover of the book that is out on print, so Knowing the West. So this is a bit of a case study, of course. The exhibition will open in September of this year at Crystal Bridges, and it will travel to 2 or 3 additional venues. We still have an opening if you want to talk to me later. Okay, but believe it or not, I'm not here to talk about Knowing the West per se and the merits of the exhibition, which I could go on and on. I'm going to use it as just a conversation point. So I will give you just a quick snapshot of what this is about. So the exhibition checklist encompasses artwork from the 19th to the early 20th century, made by Native American and non-Native American artists. We include textiles, baskets, paintings, pottery, sculpture, beadwork, saddles, and prints. And I don't know, maybe some of those objects will be created together? Probably not. But, you know, we can talk about reverberations later. We have about 25 institutional lenders, which is not actually that much for over 100 objects, because we've really clustered objects together from single lenders, partially to also, you know, save some funding, but also so that we can really focus our efforts in what feels like it should be more sustainable, to be honest with you. It is an exhibition that's really the first to present Art of the West in this dialogue. It's offering new ways of thinking about American West, yes, and even can be a model for new ways of thinking about American art. It has the potential to draw immense audiences to the topic. Who would not want to be involved with this project? As it turns out, there are many barriers. So what I thought I would do, again, because the exhibition kind of structures my life, these are the themes of the exhibition, but I thought I would use them to talk about some of the challenges with loans. And I'm going to go through things like hidden costs, including loan fees, costly or impossible conditions, a refusal to think creatively. Dale, I loved how you said in a painting at the George O'Keeffe Museum can get 120,000 visitors a year. A painting on loan can have 1 million viewers. Okay, this is, I think, a nice backbone. Okay, so the first theme of authority, in the exhibition we're really asking who has the authority to tell the stories of the West. And in this case, I might say, really, how can we share the authority and with it, the access to art? So as Stephen pointed out earlier, museum rhetoric these days is moving away from a preserve art into something that's more about collaboration, community, multiple authors, bringing together others. And so I just am showing you, this is our Curatorial Advisory Council from a convening, that really this is about shared authority and putting together even what are key ideas. How can we bring in multiple, I would say, stakeholders or investors in the idea? And then hopefully those would become lenders, would be part of the community. It's a good idea. The whole exhibition, really to set the stage for time, is about giving, like decentering the dominant authority and stories about timeline, and really featuring this winter count as a way of, again, kind of offering a different way of coming into storytelling and values, hierarchies, really breaking them down. We are saying that we're prioritizing audiences. And so we did this experimental exhibition to gather information from the audiences to help us inform how we might interpret and how far we can go to really change the way we might have someone think about a painting of the American West, for example. So we're saying all of this. It's about the audiences. It's about the people looking at, engaging. I mean, I was sitting in the gallery, we were having a little meeting when I was able to take this picture, and I just thought, this is what you want, right? Someone engaging really closely with the painting. So sharing art, promoting interaction. Isn't this what we're here for? Aren't we? Okay. So then you send out your loan requests more than 12 months in advance. So, of course, that's like timing is one of the barriers, I would say. And we know we want to get collections out of storage from across the country. Okay, now we get to the hoops and the barriers. And I will say, Registrar Leisha Alston, who's not, I don't see her here, at Crystal Bridges has become like such a strong partner in this. And some of it is just to go, oh my gosh, can you believe what they're asking us to do? So hidden loan fees. Loan fees, okay, to what end? Loan fees, okay. In one instance, $7,500 loan fee for one venue. That's $300 an object. Remember I said we have ambitions to send it to 3 additional venues? That's another $3,750 per venue. So even just in loan fees, we're paying all that. And you think, okay, well, maybe the loan fees are helping them reframe their collections, do a conservation assessment, all the good work, build mounts, because we'll need some mounts. Oh, no, 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 no. We're also helping them reframe. We're also paying for mounts, and we also paid a $50 an object charge for a conservation assessment. This is basically the whole budget for this exhibition. So we have grossly under budgeted what our loans will cost. That was for 25 objects. And they charge more if you request the loan less than 12 months in advance. So what does it cover? It is true. There is staff time and efforts for preparing objects, for reviewing objects. I understand that. But is this loan fee meant to cover operating expenses? Stephen, if it's $300 here and there, is that going to solve the problem of sustainability, financial sustainability for museums? I don't think so, but I don't know. Maybe this is all part of that. So it adds up. And then it feels a little like, as a borrower, the burden of caring for a collection falls to me, not to the owner of the artwork. And so how are museums not, well, they're buying too much stuff, they're building too many buildings. So that kind of flip-flop of you can't even share your collections, even though you have too many collections in storage and you need somebody else to see them, it's this vicious circle. It's really frustrating. I will note, Crystal Bridges does not charge loan fees. No, Art Bridges doesn't charge loan fees. They're like, here, we'll give you money to take this object. And there are other bright spots. And this object, the Dorothy Brett painting, is from the Tia collection in Santa Fe. They're fantastic. Borrow things from them. They'll even pay for shipping. Or crating, I should say. Okay. Persistence. In Knowing the West, the theme of persistent draws attention to pervading myths of the West that still persist today, but it also celebrates resilience, creativity, adaptation of artists, even amidst drastically changing circumstances. So this persistence, of course, part of this is just, we're going to keep coming back. I'm going to be really darn persistent. So I'm going to keep coming back. I'm going to try to figure out how my director can talk to your director and ask about negotiations for loan fees or see how we can do other things. But we're doing all that research ahead of time, too, to talk, build relationships, go visit collections, which I know is not maybe the most long-term eco-friendly way of looking at collections. We're also sending others out. I would argue we're borrowing expertise. It's not just the objects, it's all the great knowledge and information that each of you holds about your collections that builds that level of trust that I don't have to see all the objects. Because you know your object better than I do. But if we could talk about concepts, then if you say, gosh, Mindy, that one is really fragile and it would cost you $3,000 to conserve. Can I offer an alternative? And we could work through in these creative solution-based thinking. So objects were selected for the exhibition based on initial reviews and visuals that would tell us they were in pretty good shape. So to also then get a lot of requirements and requests for costly conservation, it just asks us to rethink what our priorities are, of course. But even with all of these relationships, the restrictions on the loans sometimes are just so untenable. Almost ridiculous. Like, why did I go sit with you, take you to lunch, spend a whole day with you, if you were simply going to say no? If you could have said no before I even put your object on the checklist, that actually would be more helpful to me. Instead of saying, watercolors, they're deemed too fragile to lend. In fact, they're so fragile, we can never show them again. Why do you have the watercolors? Generic 3-month limits on loans. A piece of metal, y'all, had a 3-month limit to the loan. And thank you for the soapbox today. But some of this is just such standard old school practice that it's just stamped on the form. We've reviewed this. It's limited to 3 months. When you pick up the phone, you have the conversation. They say, well, I don't know what that's on there. But this one needs 3 months. Well, one of the things that we're doing for sustainability at Crystal Bridges and to really help sustain our staff and not burn them out is extending the length of the exhibitions. So it's not a 12-week period, but rather closer to 5 months. This is tricky within an industry that is used to a 12-week turnover because you can't slot into other people's schedule as a venue, right? And with those 12-week restrictions, how do we switch out an object with only 5 weeks left in our show? So it's mid-show. And so to have to negotiate for a 4.5 month, on view for a textile, and that's just a reality of it. But this is where, if we could start working together on these standards, that would help. I mean, these are expensive shows. They take a lot of work to put together, to design, to paint, to build the pedestals. How can we, have a different set of standards for that time? And so after talking, to lenders, they're like, oh, no, okay, 3 months, we can extend it to, 2 years. Why not, And so sometimes it's just that persistence, those conversations. We had other crazy restrictions, because we are under a building project. I don't know how many of you have been over to Crystal Bridges so far. We're not in excavation anymore. That actually was kind of scary to have the things go, digging on the side. But we had a requirement for weekly seismographic readings during the exhibition while we have construction from sensors located at the building foundation and within the loan galleries. Is it going to make that much of a difference, Dale? I need you to tell me. But again, if you don't want to lend, just say no. It'll save us a whole lot of paperwork and headache. So in that case, to me, that's like preservation of objects truly at the expense of any additional access. Why? I do have to bring in some bright spots because, of course, not everyone says no first. And so on the left, this is a John Sloan print, a delightful print. It's called The Indian Detour, and really kind of a commentary on tourism in the Southwest. And this we're borrowing from the Tia collection. I said, oh, how long can we show it? Expecting I was going to have to get several of these prints to rotate out. And she goes, Mindy, the value of this really is, it's not that much. If we really had to replace this print, it's fine. How long is your tour? And I said, well, it's 2 years. And she's like, no problem. I was like, oh. Now, if we had our own John Sloan print in this exhibition, I'm looking at you guys, we'd have to rotate it out after one venue. But who decides those values? We have no conservator on staff at Crystal Bridges. And then on the right-hand side, this is a textile from the Denver Art Museum. And again, in conversations, it was like, okay, we're really expecting textiles to need to rotate out. And they said, well, do you think you could do 4-foot candles? I said, well, heck, sure. We just got to get people used to the eyeball adjustment by the time we get there. We do 5-foot candles on paper anyways. They said, if you can do that, we'll give them to you for the whole tour. Amazing, amazing. But that kind of creativity, conversation, and dialogue and partnership, I hope becomes more of the norm. This is another example. This is the Tia collection. So unlike the John Sloan print, they were like, this is a portfolio that hasn't been broken up. It's really pristine. It's very bright. It's a little rarer by E. Boyd or Elizabeth Boyd. But it's a whole portfolio with multiple sheets. And they just said, could you just change what's on view at each venue? Absolutely. But we're going to keep everything together. And we're going to do this even for objects that rotate out as much as possible so that we don't have to send shipments back and forth after every venue. So let's keep it all together. We'll keep it all safe. It doesn't all have to be, on view. But we have some lenders that are like, well, we need to have it back. And it's like, but only a few of your objects back? Like this, it's so hard. It's so hard. Nation building. Okay, so in the exhibition, really it's insisting that art has an important role in nation building, and then I would also argue that the American West, especially at this time, has an extremely important part of nation building, kind of building the image of America. But what I would say for this purpose is that we all, I think, in this room believe that art has such an important role in our nation today. This way of ingesting and inspiring dialogue is just, you can't replace it. It's art. I mean, there's something so powerful about that. That's why we're all here. In the exhibition, we do talk about nation building as a way of inspiring generations, investing in family. And so I just bring you these couple of examples. You know, dare I say, art could lift a nation, unite a nation. I know, it's Pollyanna, but I believe it. So I am sharing, this is also from Nation Building, just, you know, because it's nice to look at art. I like graphs, sometimes too, but I really love art. So I'm sharing some of these real examples of challenges, not just to complain, I promise, even though it sounds like I'm up here complaining. But this is something I don't think we talk about enough. So we don't budget appropriately to be able to really keep doing exciting things because all these hidden costs are adding up. And I've also been talking to others that are like, oh gosh, I thought that was just like what little museums got. They got a bunch of no's from the big museums because really the big museums just don't want to work with us. It's like, we're not a little museum, Crystal Bridges, by any sense. But we also face the same thing. And sometimes I think, oh, we're just getting these loan fees because we're Crystal Bridges and everyone thinks, oh, we're really well funded. No, these are policies that are on museums' websites. It's not just us that it's getting the Crystal Bridges cost. They're just real. But there are some museums, big, small, all different sizes. It's so inconsistent that are like, this is great. Let's partner. Let's send things out. So this is my like call for Art Bridges and for all of you to get on that side of things, right? So our final section, truly in the exhibition, is rethinking. I didn't change any of these titles, but it works perfectly, right? So how can we rethink all of this? So in the exhibition, we're rethinking and expanding on initial impressions of the American West, for example, inspiring meaningful dialogue, interrogating context. Let's interrogate the practices that we've all just adopted. And I know we need change at really high levels. I know we need board sea change. But we can all help each other at curatorial, registrarial, conservation, collections levels in building the environment for which all the other change can also happen and working alongside one another. So really, flattening artistic hierarchies is something the exhibition is doing, but I think we need to flatten hierarchies on access to art and inspire new ways of thinking. I have lots of questions on my next slide, but I'm going to skip that for back to our conversation. Okay. Thanks for giving me the soapbox, y'all.
Okay, next up is Bill Conger. Bill has been the chief curator of collections and exhibitions at Peoria Riverfront Museum since October of 2017. He oversees all content that is exhibited in the museum galleries dedicated to art, history, science, and achievement. Under Bill's leadership, the curatorial department has prioritized the museum's permanent collection while establishing important relationships with museums such as the Whitney, Colonial Williamsburg, Mayo Clinic, the Frick Museum, and the Museum of Modern Art. Prior to his post in Peoria, he served as senior curator of contemporary art at University Galleries of Illinois State University from 1993 to 2011, where he curated both one-person and group exhibitions featuring artists such as Katharina Fritsch, Jack Pearson, Amy Silman, Tony Tassett, and Renee Ricard. He has also taught painting, drawing, and color theory at both Illinois Central College and Illinois State University, where he also received a master's in fine arts in painting. For over 30 years, Conger's painting and sculpture has been exhibited throughout the United States, as well as Germany, Poland, Ireland, and New Zealand. He has presented numerous lectures on his work at venues including Drake University, the Herron School of Art, the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, Brigham Young University, and Golden Parachutes Gallery in Berlin, Germany. His upcoming exhibition of paintings at 65 Grand in Chicago is scheduled to open May 17th. Take it away, Bill.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm sorry, that was too long of a bio. That was my fault.
Embrace your achievements.
I embrace my achievements. Great to see you all today, yesterday. This is a great convening. Wonderful new faces. This is my third convening, and I'm so thrilled to be back. I have heard a lot of stories today that have been enlightening and quite frankly terrifying. Some of you people live in kind of, you breathe air that our museum only wishes someday to breathe. So a little bit anxiety producing, as well as my biography says some accomplishments. I also have a lot of deficiencies, and one of those is right here. So please stay close. I might need some help on this. We'll see how it goes. First of all, as we begin, I seem to be batting cleanup today, so amazing job. Everybody could, how about a round of applause for all our speakers? I thought that was fantastically arranged today, and also thanks to Alice and Ashley, Christy and Sarah and everybody here at Art Bridges who has worked with Peoria and invited me back to hopefully give you a few minutes of enlightened kind of perspective on Art Bridges. Again, there have been some pretty harrowing stories, but I bring tidings of great joy. I am probably, and we in Peoria are probably Art Bridges' #1 fan. They have transformed our museum. They have given us kind of limitless potential in terms of development, fundraising, collection building, and this has all happened within about 5 years' time. I first arrived in Bentonville, I think in 2018 or 19, and I don't know where that town went, but it has amazingly transformed, and the staff of 12 or so people has grown into a small arsenal of people who are doing great work. So let me just show you a few images, and I'm going to hopefully not screw things up. Let me take you to Peoria. This is our curatorial team. There are 5 of us, with the exception of a preparator and an assistant to the curatorial staff. This is it. Our museum was built in 2012. We stem from a museum called Lakeview Arts and Sciences from 1964. And in 2012, this building was built and added to arts, science, added the 2 pillars of history and achievement. So we serve a pretty broad focus. Our collection is about 18,000 objects. They're pretty encyclopedic, to say the least. We have some nice things. We have some impressionism. We have an incredible collection of folk art. We have a decoy, an American decoy collection, you know, duck hunting. We have posters. We have concert posters and musical posters. We have sculpture. We have insects, we have minerals, we have a lot of disparate stuff. So when I was hired in 2017, my job was to really kind of vision a path out of the blockbuster concept. We bring the big show in, bring all the families in the summer, and then hold until next summer. The whole idea was to activate our collections and to really bring them to life again. Before I go further, though, let me give you an idea of Peoria. Peoria is just about in the middle of Illinois. It's about 2 hours south of Chicago. Our population is 150,000 in the city, about 400,000 metro. If you Google it, I don't quite believe it. Seems a little much to me. 54% of our populace is white. 26% is black. We serve a very disparate and diverse populace. You wouldn't have known that probably prior to 2018 or so if you walked into our museum. The history of Peoria is steeped in vaudeville, whiskey making, caterpillar tractors, earth moving, and building, but not steeped in museum culture. So our role is to use the museum to build confidence that Peoria once had. We believe that they suffer from a little bit of a confidence problem today, and provide stories of their region, as well as incredible stories of art and achievement and history that will uplift the community. How do you do that with a collection of 18,000 disparate objects? Well, one thing you do is find Bentonville, Arkansas. And what happened was a very close confidant of our museum, assistant curator at one point for the museum, and at one point the youngest curator in America, very close to us, happened to be friends with Adam Weinberg, the former director of the Whitney, and at a party mentioned that there was a project coming down the line called Art Bridges, and that we should probably reach out and say hello to these people as things were kind of progressing, and that was 2018, 2019. Our first project happened to be with Adam and curator Carrie Springer. Vantage Points brought contemporary photography from the Whitney Museum to Peoria, and brought all sorts of content that Peoria was not accustomed to, which was first step in kind of igniting this desire to learn more about what we were providing, along with a philanthropic project called ESI, Every Student Initiative, which is a privately funded project that now sees 20,000 of our public school students through our doors every day or every year, and has been for the past 4 years. We've expanded into some parochial schools and some rural markets as well, but back in 2018, we began this program, and lo and behold, we were able to show kids artwork that they would have to go to Chicago, New York, LA, Houston, wherever, St. Louis in our region to be exposed to. And it was fun and absolutely game-changing for the museum. Here's image of Rodney Graham and some Rodney Graham images and students. This is curator Carrie Springer, Melissa Ann Pickney, who is also in the exhibition. And I'd like to play, if I can make this work, something. Will it play? hear it again. That was project one, along with funding like that, really transformational in terms of the amount of youngsters that we can talk to, the amount of information that we can give to our students. Of course, with the arts being slashed the way they have over the past decades, this becomes invaluable to us. That this money provided to us through the programming grants, as well, of course, as the exhibition as a whole through Art Bridges. During the pandemic, I think we saw our second project with Art Bridges. This was a kind of a self-curated type of theme called American Verses, and it really focused on three artists: Terry Adkins, Kerry James Marshall, and Mark Bradford. Thank you. Those three artists were combined at a very volatile time. Pre-pandemic, there were a confluence of things in the air at the time that made this exhibition kind of poignant. It was an amazing opportunity to bring those pieces together. We did not get Our Town. I did pay homage to Our Town yesterday. But if you have not seen this incredible digital production that Crystal Bridges put together for Our Town, please look at that. I think you can YouTube it. It really brings the painting to life. We had that in the exhibition along with some preparatory sketches by Kerry James to accompany the show. And the show was absolutely kind of bonkers. It really was a hit. The public really responded. It was the right time. Made a lot of sense. This is not a public that is necessarily open or understanding necessarily about contemporary art, but they wanted to know more. And this just kind of emboldened Peoria to move forward with Art Bridges in terms of these ideas. Some programming that went along with it saw all sorts of poetry classes and creative approaches to text and image. And then we have Archibald Motley. This painting is reinstalled currently in Crystal Bridges, and it's a masterpiece of the 10 or so Archibald Motleys that are included in the Harlem Renaissance exhibition at the Met currently. They don't hold a candle to this one. I think it's probably one of the top 5 Archibald Motleys that are in existence. We had this for over a year. Our assistant curator, Everly Davis, used this painting to interface with this. On the right-hand side, you see this kind of meandering assortment of sculpture that is called From Bronzeville to Harlem, from Bronzeville in Chicago to Harlem, New York, which celebrates the Black migration, but really is celebrating all the northern cities that benefited from that period in time. And on the kind of left of those two people there is Preston Jackson. That is the artist who obviously was inspired by Archibald Motley as he was learning the ropes as an artist. He was at one time the chair of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago's art department. He is retired and lives in Peoria currently. So the piece has now been given to the museum. So this was on loan. After the loan of the Archibald Motley, so moved Preston that a permanent gift was made of this piece to the museum. This is the transformative part about Bridges and what they are doing for us, giving us the confidence to go into the community, educate the community, and then seeing the response from people kind of jubilantly thanking us for bringing this type of work and responding in kind. So much so that we have a pair of twins who happened to live in our region, who saw what Art Bridges was doing for us, what we were bringing, and decided to give their entire contemporary art collection, about 120 objects and works on paper primarily, to the museum. There's a Glenn Ligon on the left-hand side here, purchased for the museum because of a project that Ashley and I are working on moving into the future. So at this point, we now have collectors who are calling me, asking me, is this the type of work that would work for the museum? Is this something that Art Bridges could work with in terms of a project? And then they're going out and buying things. I mean, this is unheard of. It really is a dream. I had no idea when I took this job that I would be able to see this happen for this collection. And then shortly after that, we brought Warhol's Endangered Species to the museum, and through the Art Bridges programming grant, we're able to produce an incredible fashion show that Everly Davis spearheaded that posited young high school designers with professional designers and kind of clothes makers, clothes designers and tailors and such, and they created these costumes in response to the Warhol exhibition and put it on in this incredible evening of experimentation and expression, and was an amazing success. Shortly after that, we brought actually a couple groupings in and called them American Revolutionaries, Art and Disruption, kind of in harmony with the disruptive quality that Art Bridges and Alice Walton's vision was really, we felt was impacting our region and impacting museums our size in areas similar to ours as well. The incredible thing about working with Art Bridges is that they are very flexible in how you use the work. If there are potential lenders in the audience who are kind of experimenting, you absolutely can have a say in how the work will be shown. But ultimately, Art Bridges presents this work and allows the creative process, the curatorial process, to take hold, and also allows you to incorporate other works into the groupings as well, thus cultivating donors, cultivating lenders, cultivating all sorts of different types of gifts. Incidentally, we always use images of our artists on our labels. It's on there, and it just kind of hit me. This was suggested by a young man who was in the museum one time. I remember I was telling him about the work of Richard Hunt, and I told him Richard Hunt was the African-American sculptor. Of course, we just lost him recently. And the young man said, well, how would I know he's African-American? I said, well, I just told you. But he said, well, how about a picture? It's actually a great idea. So from then on, we started including images of every artist. The kids who come through see people who look like them, and it's really powerful. Along with this exhibition, American Revolutionaries, came a painting which on the right-hand side, produced by a kind of emerging, I wouldn't say young necessarily, but he's an emerging painter who's really taken the art world by storm, Alfred Conte, and that is Malik and Marquise, who are twins, and were painted at kind of pre-pandemic, a point of pre-pandemic dystopia, really, and they're kind of faced with the future of their district, their neighborhood, their school. Everything is kind of in front of them, and them either not knowing or questioning what the future may bring. We brought Alfred in because that painting spoke to so many students. There were kids who just were enthralled by this thing. So we ended up bringing Alfred in. Alfred did a demo class. He did a little lecture. He was incredible. Alfred lives in Atlanta, if I didn't say that yet, and his portraits have always been of Atlanta people. We asked him, if we could raise the money, would you produce a painting of Peorians? And we would raise the money to put it in our collection. And that was about 8 months ago, and we are ready to do that in June. Along with this project, we have produced a little film on the production of this painting. I'm going to show you just about 3 or 4 minutes of that, if you can endure it. So that is maybe a little longer than the 3 minutes I thought, but it really does give you an idea of this project and what it's meant to Alfred, what it means to Peoria Riverfront Museum. We're going to unveil this in June. This was taken just 4 days ago. This is Everly Davis, our assistant curator, visiting Alfred in his studio, and the painting is a little over 50% finished, but coming to Peoria soon. And this was the film, the money for the film and the commission for the painting was raised by our local donors. There no other money. There's no Art Bridges money in this piece. But this piece doesn't happen without that snowball, right? Doesn't happen without Art Bridges. Also, projects with the great American Folk Art Museum in New York City. Jason Bush is in the audience, of course. Our first project with the Folk Art Museum began about, I think, 1.5 years ago. My curator of folk art, Zach Zetterberg, visited the museum. We said hi and had a chat with Emily Gavalt, who a year later put together this incredible show. So Jason, unbelievable. This has been transformative for our folk art people. I mentioned that we have a decoy collection, really indigenous art form. Native Americans used the decoy literally thousands of years ago. And there are 40 decoys from the American Folk Art Museum collection that are in Peoria and will be housed in cases and walled cases that are being built by the Peoria tribe in Miami, Oklahoma. This is the first kind of triangulation of these really interesting entities, and really poetic and really meaningful and beautiful. So this is Art Bridges. So we cannot say enough about what they have done for us. This is a collection, it's on the wall now, called Fresh. It is a good smattering of the 2022 acquisitions. Am I wrong? I think I said, could I have them all? And she said, I don't know about all, but we'll do what we can. So we have Deanne Arbus, of course, and Robert Colescott, a painting that hasn't been seen in 40 years, a Jack Levine from 1963. I mean, these things are like gold to us. They absolutely are. So I think I've probably gone too long, but thanks to Art Bridges, as always, and happy to take questions. Thanks.
Okay, let's open it up for questions. Everybody's tired now. We're so close to done.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Bess Murphy. I'm at the O'Keeffe Museum in Santa Fe. I'm just curious about very specifically the impact of the free admission program for school children. It's so critically important, and I guess I have a couple of questions just about like long-term impact and how you've seen that continue to resonate, how perhaps like your board and other elements of the institution have encouraged that or maybe questioned that, and then also like the practicalities of like, does that also include transportation? Does that, what other elements came into play with that?
Thank you for the question. Can you hear me, or should I guess I should use this. Transportation and food, they all bring a lunch. This is the 5th year that it is that we've seen the ESI project. I remember the first year we would see some youngsters and have you ever been to the museum before? And nah, not really, you know, jumping around doing their thing. Next year, the year after, have you ever been to the, I've been here 3 times. I've been here 4 times. I've been here twice. And then they'll go show you the amethyst, the 10-foot amethyst we have, or the inflatable earth that we have, or the, they begin taking us on a tour. It's very early. 5 years is, you know, we're still trying to quantify what is happening. But we're doing it. We're getting outcomes all the time from the teachers and the school boards and everybody who's involved in this. And I will say that our board has been committed since day one, absolutely ironclad support. That continues. The donation is there. We are setting up an endowment to make sure that this is not a fluke, something that could possibly go away. We can only imagine that the ripples that we're creating are going to create tidal waves soon. So that's our hope.
Hi, amazing presentation, amazing collection and exhibitions. Every time you would show a new exhibition, I'm just jealous I wasn't there to experience it. My question is, how are you building engagement? How are you attracting diverse communities in Peoria, and how are you getting them to the museum?
So, threefold probably. Every student initiative, one, we always give, every kid gets family passes. So we give every child who comes through there, they bring their family for free in a return visit. The work that we're showing, quite frankly, I didn't go into, just pre-COVID, we annihilated 6 permanent fixed exhibits in our galleries and transformed those all into rotational spaces. So we now have about 35,000 square feet of rotational galleries, and that equals about 9 or 7 depending on how we set them up. So we have engaged the Black community through all sorts of projects like Bronzeville to Harlem. Our programming invites interaction, and we're still figuring it out. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I know that we're on the right track. But again, measuring outcomes is crucial, and we are still, we do coves. We do the Art Bridges Coves project here. It has been very beneficial. We do our own version of it. We have kind of a kiosk, you know, give us your information. What did you like? What didn't you like? But I would also say that the Black population is just a start. I mean, we're just kind of beginning. There are lots of other voices that need to be in the museum, but I would say our high-level giving from people of color has risen significantly, only suggesting that it has been recognized and kind of, I guess, understood in terms of donation in turn. So we're working on figuring all that out.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you both, really. This was such an inspiring series of presentations. And I've been thinking a lot as a result of what it is that you've been speaking about sort of this collective action and need to support one another. And Mindy, you were talking about that specifically. And I think my question, I mean, it's to all of us, but I think it's, you spoke, so I'm posing it to both of you, which is, how do we link arms together? And I'm thinking specifically, I mean, your point about loan fees and the nickel and diming that I think all of us do to one another, or many of us do to one another, not because we want to, but because everyone else is doing it. And, how can we all collectively work together to sort of try and be better partners with one another to make all of this possible?
Honestly, that was a slide, like a question that I was going to pose to the group too, because I think, this is the right platform for it. Like, if Art Bridges is a change maker and one of the great inspirers to get others of us to, come along and think differently. And I don't know, Stephen, how long does it take? I mean, if we're in the decades, but again, can more of us just, the other thing about loans, do you all have the thing where it's like, well, I lent you this, so I need that? I don't know, how do we break the cycle, right? Like, if one is doing it and then you're kind of forced to do it, and then you're like, oh, I really want that. Like, how do I use mine to do this? But then isn't that pretty exclusive? Because who are the people that have all the things? Well, Art Bridges is growing it. If I went to Bill and said, well, I don't know. Honestly, I've not gotten onto your collections website. Like, this is not a museum that I would be like, oh, what can I get from Peoria? I didn't look for Knowing the West. So how do we also break out of those hierarchical exchanges, I think, is the other question I would pose for us, because we tend to talk to our peers, right? So I don't know. Does anyone else have an answer for that? But I'm game. Like, call me. Bring me along. I'm ready. I got your name now. I don't know. Anne is going to fix it all.
I mean, I think part of it is, and I was just saying this to the team the other day, I think part of Art Bridges' role is being like a connector and a networker, because we talk with so many people and you don't know what you don't know, right? So you wouldn't even think to go to Peoria necessarily. And I think part of our job is just to have like an ear to the ground so that we can make those connections on behalf of you. And then I think the call to action for the wider field is to change. So we have these convenings, but we haven't been very public about them, and that needs to change. So it's like a secret society, right? Come to Bentonville, and then, but so from this one, we're filming it. We want to be able to share it more broadly. We want to have a white paper that comes out as a result of it and have some actual follow-up. And then I think that's where we can really conspire with Stephen and Remuseum, right? And think of them as the kind of think tank, and then we can actually scale things out and deploy things out with partners.
I think one of the things I appreciate about this group of people is oftentimes I go to conferences and I'm talking to other curators. And there are some of you in here. I like talking to curators. But to be able to link arms, I think we need interdepartmental workings. And I don't know as much about your museum, but it can get siloed really quickly. And that's something I've appreciated about Knowing the West is I'm developing a very close relationship with our registrar on the project. And we are far more like-minded than maybe the stereotypical curator registrar divide. But just even like learning that about each anyways in these ways that we're not at AAMC right now. Like, we're not just at the art, but that's a great platform too. But anyways.
Mindy, you're a breath of fresh air. And I have to say, I don't mean to attack the conservators in this room, but I will say that as much as museums are colonialist, imperialist enterprises, conservation is a perpetuation of many of those ideologies and beliefs. So for me, the fact that, and I'm not looking at you, Dale, because you seem to have a heart of gold, but but the ways in which contemporary practitioners these days are pushing media and using media that is ephemeral, fragile, degradatory, in somewhat, contravention of what is classical, Western art historical canonical media, conservation is not caught up with that. And the ways in which we need to have a serious conservation conversation about that as well as the fact that this planet will burst into flames before much of these objects will be seen, it's frankly incredulous to me. So who changes that conversation?
Well, I will say, truly refreshingly, one of the advocates for actually shifting, to more venues and longer exposure in these conversations has been conservation. Not universally. I would say it's sort of like half and half where we're getting it from. But as a curator, in my mind, it's up to me to ask those hard questions. Like, really, there's absolutely no condition in which this can be shown. Can we keep talking? Because I can be persistent. And I mean, then I'll get exhausted about something else. But how do we all kind of swim in that direction and all try to break down that? I don't know, and I think it's more possible in some instances than others. But you're right. But I've been surprised that the conservators have been really good advocates in some of the lending institutions for this. So that's been really refreshing.
It's maybe another question for Mindy. I'm wondering if you've noticed additional challenges with loan requests post-pandemic, as I think all of our institutions have gone through this seismic global event. Staffing has shifted around, resources have shifted around. It's a new normal, whatever this normal is. But yeah, I mean, because obviously you worked on shows before the pandemic, and you're now working on the Knowing the West, here. But I'm wondering if you've seen a sea change there.
Honestly, no. This has always been kind of tricky. And if anything, I feel like we should have all had a slightly readjustment of values in the pandemic. Loan fees, to me, are getting more prevalent. And even institutions where we weren't charged before, but now all of a sudden they're adding them in. Do you think, Jennifer? I see you nodding your head back there. Maybe I would even ask Jennifer, but we're trying. Crystal Bridges works on such a short timeline compared to bigger institutions. Like, this was probably the first exhibition, maybe I shouldn't say this when it's being recorded, where we actually got our loan letters out more than a year in advance of the show. We were like, oh, we just did it. We did it. So normally it's much shorter. So in some ways, then they become difficult in that. So it's hard because I don't think I haven't worked on shows that are maybe apples and apples. There are so many other conditions that have changed, like it's last minute or, something like that. But I don't know. I think the fees seem to be the thing that are popping up more, and like more questions about, like, well, can you reframe my piece? Well, is it structural? No, it's just an ugly frame. I don't know. We don't have that much money, That feels more prevalent. That care of collections for others. Not that we've never asked somebody to reframe a piece for us. I want to be really clear. We're part of the problem in some ways.
Thank you. I had something that I was thinking about in relation to kind of the conversation between Mindy and Asma, not about loan fees, but about conservation. And one thing that, because I appreciate everything that you're saying, Asma, it's like a conversation we're constantly having with the conservation department. So at the Whitney, at least, our loan committee functions with a group of people in the room, and all the decisions are really kind of made in conversation. And that conversation, that loan committee, includes Mara as the head of collections and exhibitions management. It includes curators from the different mediums. It includes conservators from the different mediums and registration. So we have all of the voices there together who can then advocate in different ways, so that I would say every single loan committee meeting has work that comes up where the conservator would say, like there's, if we're going by the books, this request is not possible. And then that initiates the conversation around, is this the solo exhibition of this artist? We know this work has day glow paint. We know that it literally has a lifespan, but is this the time that we say we're gonna put it in that show? Yes. We do try, we're not perfect. We do try to, I should also say that, we do try to say there are smaller institutions that where we maybe aren't gonna be like looking for a lend back in any way, but we recognize, and this I really credit to like our former director, Adam Weinberg, who've had such passion for supporting small institutions, trying to waive loan fees when possible, and trying to be generous in that way. But I also think the one thing that conservators often serve back to us on the curatorial side is, okay, if you really want to support this loan, then do you foresee needing that work or wanting to show that work here in the next 5-10 years? If you can say that you're strongly advocating the work be in this show, then that's fine, and then we will. So I guess all this to say, I think, and also living artists. If there's a living artist that we're working with who wants to show work in a way that, again, defies a lot of our rules, but we want to support them, then we try to, like, is there a way to make this happen? So it feels like it just has to be a dialogue, and I think that all of us have to continue working on that. And I don't know, I think in other institutions there may be more of like a hard line on the side of conservation. So I guess we're maybe in some middle ground.
Yeah, and I think that a little bit is where I think Art Bridges, you know, if again we bring it back to like how can funding and support, and even if it's connecting all of us in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise been connected, but how can we redo the standards? I mean, that sounds really extreme, but instead of just 3 months for an exhibition, get to 5 months. And that feels like a tiny baby step, but that's one less exhibition a year, which if all of us did one less exhibition a year, let your staff breathe just a little bit. You know, we are throwing away less material. There are plenty of exhibitions out there. We all have collections that are not being shown. How do you engender that sea change too? And do we all talk about a sustainability slightly differently? You know, because we're talking about environment, we're talking about financial sustainability. I appreciated to hear about the people and the community sustainability and how being mindful of that long term, you know, and thinking 10 years instead of year by year, decades. It's inspiring.
I think just wanted to add, and this is more kind of with a climate frame, but also just in general, just like a change frame, is that we all have agency. We have individual agency, we have agency to influence, we have collective agency. And so you're just saying, you know, maybe it's a 2-month shift, but why not do it? And I think one of the things that we see for climate, right, is that airing out of the dirty laundry that no one wants to do or be, you know, that they think their donors will care, but tons of other sectors have already done that, right? We are pretty small compared to a lot of other ones. And so if we do really want to keep being trusted and have people come in, we have to be vulnerable. We have to be transparent. And that could be climate. That could be, hey, we're not going to do as many exhibitions this year. And I think talking about it and having convenings like this is where that change can start. And so thinking about whether it is standards or just practice or questioning it is a great place to start. But then where do we go with it is, you know, maybe you have an exhibit in a year that maybe for you 6 months, you know, whichever the timeline is, and you can just do that. And I think we can all have that agency to ask and try to push that forward and ask any, you know, push back and ask those questions. And I think it's not just the conservators. We're all comfortable with business as usual, but COVID really flipped that for us. And that was practice frankly, for anything climate or anything changing. And we need to be able to use that and be inspired by it to think differently. And so everything we've been saying today is really that how do we do things differently without doing a ton more extra work? And it is just thinking differently, being innovative, being creative. And that's probably why we're all in this field. So really capitalizing on that And I think art bridges can really help make that connection between people and just calling people, whether it's between institutions or frankly just within your own institution. So I think we all have that agency to do it. It's just doing it and trying to be vulnerable and talking about it and sharing with other people.
Last two questions. Go back and then back to you.
Hi. Don't know if people can hear me. So everyone's pointing to Dale when they talk about conservation. So I'm also a conservator. And I just had to say something. So I completely, and I've had these conversations already with people here where it's like, you know, uh-oh, here comes the bad cop, womp womp. Conservation's about to say no and all of your dreams are crushed. But I will say, what I'll say about that is I think that is a really long-standing kind of impression of us, but I don't actually think it remains accurate. Speaking for myself personally, I specialize in contemporary materials and contemporary production methods. I feel like so I'm the director of conservation at the Toledo Museum of Art. And I've been there 3 months. I was at the V&A, and throughout these kind of the years in my experience, I feel like there's just an incredible group of conservators right now, conservation scientists right now, we are doing so much to collect new data points, to keep up with this kind of the new materials. Everything's proprietary. No one will tell us what anything's made of anymore. And I think that like what can sometimes seem as though we are saying no, I don't think we're saying no. I think we're trying to be creative, but we're also pushing back because in the sense of that day glow painting is a perfect example because it's, you know, you're asking us why no, and we're saying, well, why yes? Because there are good reasons, there are creative ways we can display things, but we need to know more information before we can actually proceed with our treatment. So yeah, I would love to speak to all of you about this because I really feel like we can work together. I think we can be so creative, and I know that no matter what the material, no matter what the medium, obviously ephemerality is a problem, but you know, everything is ephemeral down the line if you actually think about it in terms of millennia. So let's talk is all I would say, right?
I mean, this is an amazing dialogue, and you're absolutely right. You know, in the face of complete climate collapse, you know, what business do I have of trying to figure out what's going to be around in 300 years when we really need to take some immediate action? And I love the conflict because I think, you know, the internal conflict that Mindy's talking about, because it gets us to new dialogues, right? It creates a shared understanding. It creates a brand new dialogue we've never had before. So we have this O'Keeffe watercolor that she did, a gorgeous nude that is done in Brazil wood watercolor. And it is so incredibly fugitive. So we did microphase spectroscopy to see at what point this watercolor would be visibly different to the human eye, right? And so what I've done with every watercolor and pastel in the collection is I've sort of given it a 5-year gas tank over 125 years. So if we follow the management and exhibit it for the proper number of weeks, every 5 years, it'll take 125 years to color change that object to where somebody will see it differently. And color was really important to O'Keeffe. I mean, it was the thing that communicated more than words, right? So this work can only take 15 weeks of 5-foot candlelight exposure every 5 years to make it to 125 years. And God, I mean, it's an incredible responsibility. You know, what 15 weeks does the curator pick? What audience gets to see this thing? I mean, it's really, I don't have an answer, right? But I know what the rate of change is for that object. And so the question is, how do we want to manage that? Yeah, and I don't think there's one answer. I just think the dialogue is the important thing. In this case, the process is the important thing, and we document this process. For goodness sakes, folks, we're museums. Documentation is what we do that galleries don't do. So for goodness sake, when you have those dialogues, write it down, archive it, make sure that somebody can see how you made those decisions. For Mindy, I want to say that about 10, 12 years ago, the director asked me to calculate on average what it takes to prepare a loan, right? And I agree. I understand that we probably do more prep than a lot of people do. But my job is to figure out what the environmental sensitivities of that thing is, right? Understand the rate of change, and then control for those sensitivities. And it came out to about $3,500 per object on average, right? And so the question was, okay, so that included utilities, electricity, the building maintenance staff, right, on a sort of per hour basis. It was about $3,500 that the museum board and all of our fundraising efforts were supporting. And the question is, so what part of that do you want to charge?
That's a high loan fee.
Right, exactly right. But the point that my board made was, that's the
job.
business
That's
we're
the business.
in. Right, is understanding what the sensitivities are of our own collections. And these loans may be the only chance we get in 10 years to take that kind of look. So of course we're going to do that, and we're not going to charge for that because that's the business we're in. So there's a real answer to your question of what does it cost? And then for the museums that are lending, then there's the whole business model. So if you understand that you want to share your collection and that it's going to cost your museum in direct and indirect costs $3,500, how do you pay for that? What is the business model that supports those costs? Because we've got to have it. Going broke doesn't do anybody any good. We've got to support that with revenue streams, cost savings, whatever it is, but that's what we've got to do. So that's why these discussions are so important, because the answers will change every year, I think. And we have to do exactly this, is to have these hard conflict conversations.
But I was, just struck with the idea that collecting institutions are governed by a lot of policies that tell them what they can't do with their collections of all kinds. And it seems kind of strange then that they aren't governed by any policies that tell them what they should do with their collections, right? And so I think when we think about the fact that, we've talked about this, if you're going to just keep taking works in, and you're not going to be required to have a budget line that budgets loans, right, then you're not really being accountable to this aspect of the utilization of the collection for your mission. And I just wonder, it just feels like we're calling for a new way. Otherwise, we're kind of stuck where either you've got, and I know museums are lending generously, but you're either kind of a museum that's acting, frankly, like a miser, or you're a foundation that is actually giving money out to help the flow of artwork, and we haven't figured out how to bring those two business models together. And I think we have to admit that there is something that is connected. An institution that acts miserly should not be surprised if the public feels that coming kind of through its pores in some way, that it does not feel like a generous institution because its policies and its budget aren't actually generous with its assets. And so I kind of wish Whitney were here, because I wonder if there's some calling here to say, what would our public say about what we should be doing with our collections? We are hoarding that decision, frankly, with really smart people and experts and people who are learning and adapting, but we are learning to ask our public how to interpret art, how to exhibit art. Why aren't we asking them how to lend art?